Welcome back to NetLab 13, configuring a vSAN data store. And I'm Richard Golson, and let's take a look at our next task. In the previous task, we created a distributed switch. Now we're going to create a distributed port group on that distributed switch. And so to do that, let's first of all, since we're in the networking node, let's expand the data center. And we can see that we have this new vSAN lab distributed switch. And when I expand that, you'll see that we already have a port group here, a D port group, and then the vSAN lab uplinks, which were created on that vSAN lab distributed switch. Let's go ahead and create a new distributed port group. So we'll go ahead and right click on that, select distributed port group, and then select new distributed port group. And then for the name, let's go ahead and change this to vSAN. Keep something simple here. We'll click our next button. And note that we are now at the Configure Settings window. And in the Configure Settings, we're not going to make any changes, but do take note with port binding, we have static binding. Port allocation is elastic, so it can add more ports. It'll start with 8 ports. And we're not going to set a VLAN, although we could do so. Not necessary for this task. But what we do want to do is make another configuration change, which is not available to us yet until we click on the Customize Default Policies under the Advanced, and you'll notice suddenly we have additional options down here, which we're going to work with. So now that we've clicked this box here, we'll hit Next. And it's on this page that we're going to make the changes to the new distributed port group security settings. And so we're going to set the promiscuous mode, MAC address changes, and forge transmits to accept. So it's going to be able to accept all of those. We're going to select that, select accept, and select accept. Let's hit our next button. Now if we take a look here, you can see that we have a traffic shaping page where we could make some configuration changes. Notice that both the ingress and egress is currently disabled. And we're going to leave it that way. We don't need to apply any traffic shaping, but if this were for not storage, but for networking our virtual machines, providing a network for our virtual machines to work over, this would be a really great way to manage that kind of traffic. We'll hit the next button here. And you can see here that we are on the teaming and failover. Notice that it's set to route based on originating virtual port. So we're not going to make a change to that. And that's a load balancing policy. So with the route based on originating virtual port, the virtual switch would select the uplink that will be used based on the virtual machine's port ID that's on the switch. Since we're not really working with that right now, we're just going to go ahead and leave all this alone. Notice we have the active uplinks, uplink 1 through uplink 4. The VM port groups and VM kernel ports will connect to the outside world through the physical Ethernet adapters that are in turn connected to the uplink ports on the virtual switch. So the uplinks are virtual ports that are used specifically to make a connection between the VM kernel ports and the physical ports on the switch. So we'll leave this alone. So no changes made here. Hit the next. And then the next page, you'll see that there is an opportunity if we needed to actually monitor the traffic using NetFlow. NetFlow is a network protocol that collects IP traffic information and monitors network flow. So by analyzing that net flow data, you can get a picture of the network traffic flow and the volume. That's something we're not going to work with, so we'll just leave that disabled and hit next. And on the miscellaneous step here, we're going to leave the defaults and click next again. And then you'll see that we're ready to finish here. All set. We'll hit the finish button. And we're done. So very few changes made. If we take a look here, we might actually be able to catch it looks like it's done. At this point, the distributed port groups were built very quickly, so no work to be, nothing to really see there. We now have our vSAN distributed port group right here. And you take a look at that right there. So in our next step, we're going to add the ESXi host to our distributed switch. So we'll see you then.